There is a cosmic intervention happening in our planetary situation. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what that means. Hi, I'm Saratoga Ocean, and I work together with an interuniversal, interdimensional, and extraterrestrial force known as Telstar, along with Archangel Michael. I want to give you some new information related to Ascension so you can see that there's actually a cosmic intervention happening in our world. There are some very, very important dots that we all need to start connecting. It occurred to me very recently that we as cosmic creators, lightworkers, wayshowers, and starseeds, we really need to undergo a major paradigm shift. In fact, I think everyone on Earth could use this kind of a paradigm shift. See, we have been so programmed to think that the military, the government, and all of those people who have always been in authority all of our lives are who we look to verify what is happening extraterrestrially on this planet, if anything is happening according to them, right? Now, as I'm filming this video, they pretty much have a very lame version of disclosure underway. They show us these goofy little movies of tic-tac videos and green things that you can barely make out what it is. And they say, ooh, this might be a UFO, but it could also be something else. Well, you guys know it's pretty lame, right? But I just found out something else that kind of concerns me a little bit. I just recently learned of a quote from the President of France who made the following statement. President Macron said, "Space is the new area of confrontation, and having a weapons command center is necessary to defend ourselves in space and from space." Meaning, of course, extraterrestrials, right? But here's the other weird thing that I just learned about that happened, I think, in this past March. Apparently, France, Germany, Italy, and the United States Space Force came together in Europe to do war games about a possible threat from outer space. Part of those war games were all about, or the story, I guess they always make up a story around these, right? Was to protect people from unidentified extraterrestrial intruders. And in other words, these intruders could either be, from other countries, or they could be extraterrestrial. Now, they're actually doing war games about this, you guys. That's a little bit weird because that kind of matches the narrative that they're feeding us so far. Well, these things are flying around. We don't know what they are. They could be extraterrestrial or they could be other countries, but they are a national security threat. So, okay, I was kind of laughing that off, but now I'm thinking, war games? So my point about that is we have to do something in our minds. We need a paradigm shift, even though I know that we all know these guys couldn't possibly be our authorities. That's ridiculous. But we've all been programmed on a collective basis to see them that way. And because it's like, why are we so looking forward to their disclosure? Why are so many people looking forward to that? Because their disclosure is irrelevant, right? See, we have been brainwashed by Hollywood, by movies, by stories, by the media, by all of this stuff. We have been so brainwashed. And this could be subconscious programming that we're not even aware of. We're not even aware that we're looking through certain filters when we think about extraterrestrial intervention. Because we've been brainwashed to see that it's all about war, it's all about conflict, it's all about these, space aliens attacking Earth or whatever. And I think even though we may not consciously really believe in this, I think we need to take stock of the fact that this programming, this collective programming may have affected us more than we realize. Here's what I mean by that. I find it kind of strange that we don't really lend serious credibility to all of the people around this planet who have had direct contact with extraterrestrials, have had sightings. We just kind of act like, well, yeah, we know about that, we believe that, but almost like it doesn't really count. And I think this is the paradigm that needs to change. Now, I want to go back to a personal story that I've talked about in this 3-video series here in great detail. So I just want to highlight a certain part of that story. If you want the details, I'll put the link in the description. You can watch the whole series if you haven't watched it already, and then you'll know the entire story. But let me just talk about this one piece that I think is very applicable to what I'm describing here today. So if you've been following me, then you know that I am a walk-in. And I have to mention that because what I'm about to share with you actually happened to the person that was here before I got here. And I want to share with you specifically about a particular extraterrestrial contact that she had. Now, she and her boyfriend at the time were out one night driving and saw 3 physical spaceships above the grocery store where they were going. And I want to emphasize the fact that these were physical. So here's the super short condensed version. She was taken up into one of those ships with a whole lot of other people. And at the time, the people on this one ship, I'm going to guess there were maybe like around 100 people that were taken up on this one ship. They were obviously very large. And they were made aware that there were other ships at the same time who were also taking large groups of people up from all around the world. Now, this was not an abduction thing like what you hear about. This was specifically people being brought up to be given a very particular message. Now, the ship that she was on, it had walls, but the walls were opaque, but they could be made completely transparent, so they could shift back and forth. So at one point, the walls were made transparent as this message was being given, and everyone could see the Earth from space. It was beautiful. It was, I don't know if this makes any sense to you all, but it was, let's say, about this big from, I don't know. You could see the whole planet. It was quite a distance away. It was absolutely beautiful, glowing, blue, gorgeous jewel. So as they were looking at the planet from a distance, all of these people were being given some kind of communication from a very tall extraterrestrial that was at the front of what looked like this circular room. Everyone was standing up, and these were all different kinds of people from all different walks of life who were just like ordinary people. And the most striking thing about this whole situation is that the beings that were communicating were emanating the most profound love. I mean, love was like the permeating force of energy through this entire situation. And I can assure you that that kind of love does not exist on this planet, but it should. Now, looking back on this, I can tell you for sure this was a massive, massive activation of, I think, people who were starseeds and lightworkers. Most of what was communicated was not recalled. I can only speak about Karen, who's the person that was here before me. I can only speak about her experience. I can't speak about everyone else's experience. That's not possible. But I can speak for her experience. Most of what was communicated was not consciously remembered when the whole thing was over. But what was remembered were some very key points. And one of those key points was they were talking about a transition that Earth was going to go through. That was a big focus about this transition. And I can tell you, I think these people were really a part of that transition. That's why I believe they were brought up to this ship to be given this message. That's why I think these were light workers and starseeds. But here was the exact primary activation message. This was an absolute activation. And the message was this is word for word. The time is coming soon for you to shed your false identity and be who you really are. That is word for word the exact message. That message carried with it a humongous activation. And if you watch that video series that I mentioned, that I'll put in the description, in that video series, I described the entire what happened after that, the whole aftermath, and how powerful that really, really was. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, that is so profound. Not just for that one person's experience, not just for Karen's experience that I described, but we're talking hundreds and hundreds of people, and maybe 100 or so on this one ship, but there were other ships, and who knows how often this might have been happening, right? But the key thing is that these ships were physical. Now, I think they were transdimensional as well, but They could be physically seen with the physical eyes. This was not the Greys. This was not any of those typical ET races that we always hear about that are involved with this planet. No, it was none of those guys. These guys were very, very high-level extraterrestrials. This was a whole different deal. But the thing that was really clear is that everyone who was taken on board this ship had some kind of a relationship to this process with this planet Earth, which is what I think is the ascension process that we're all going through right now. Now, I gotta confess to you guys, I have actually had this experience without even realizing it, kind of put in a different slot, sort of like over here somewhere. Well, yeah, that kind of thing happens. And that's when I realized, wait a second, that's just one person's experience. But how many people around this planet have shared other experiences? And I'm not talking about these government insiders who come secretly spill the beans about what the military and the government's doing, because that's all we ever hear about, right? So that only contributes to our false association that they are the ones in control, that the controllers hold the reins of the entire narrative. Because most of what we hear is stuff from whistleblowers, government whistleblowers. Well, what if we just put all of that aside and say, hey, you know what? That doesn't matter at all. What matters is things like what I just shared with you all. Because what really hit me when this occurred to me the other day is physical ships. These were physical ships. These were extremely high-level extraterrestrials making direct contact with human beings, lightworkers and starseeds, I presume, because it just makes sense to me that they would be the ones getting this message. I mean, they're here, you guys. They're here. They are helping us. They're helping us directly. We are not on this planet all by ourselves, left to figure it out and fend for ourselves. This, to me, is a beautiful example of the fact that we really are co-creating our mission here, our role here, with some extremely high-level extraterrestrial beings. Now, here's another thing that's occurred to me. If this brainwashing, this insidious mind control programming that's just, we're always being fed with the government, the military, they're the ones that know about the extraterrestrials. We're constantly, even through people who are trying to help, even people who are trying to bring forth disclosure, they're always talking about it from a military standpoint. So that insidious programming might actually be causing us to just be kind of unconscious or blind to something so much more powerful, so much more real and pertinent to our purpose and our mission here as lightworkers and starseeds. We might just not even be able to completely consciously connect with it, because that brainwashing has us living inside a paradigm that is a paradigm that's been created literally by the controllers. So you don't want to underestimate the power of a deep-seated belief and paradigm to eclipse your ability to connect with a different, higher, much more profound and benevolent situation. So let me just encapsulate. What is the messaging that we've been given about extraterrestrial contact with our planet forever, right? What is the main messaging? We've gotten it from movies. It's all about battles. It's about attack. It's about warring with extraterrestrial beings. We have a very bad habit of always looking for disclosure from the government, from the military, and maybe not even the official voices of those institutions that come through the media. But we're also looking for disclosure through people who are a part of those institutions, the whistleblowers who tell us, oh, well, this happened and that happened, but it's all still in the context of the controller's reality. So you put all of that together with the movies and Hollywood, and I don't know if our thought processes are functioning when it comes to extraterrestrial cosmic intervention. If our thought processes are functioning at a particular vibratory level, a particular frequency, let me give you an example. It's kind of like a radio. If you have a radio station, you tune into one station, you're not going to hear the other stations. You're just going to hear the one you tuned into. So maybe we're just tuned in to the frequency of that militaristic viewpoint of extraterrestrials. And we're so tuned into that from all this programming that that's all we hear. The other stuff is almost like, it's sort of like background noise. It's like, well, we know it's there, but we don't really, our vibration, our thoughts, our frequency is tuned to the militaristic version, the controller's version, the government, whatever you want to call it. So what's occurred to me is, what if we shift our frequency so we're tuned in to the frequency that, for example, this story that I just told you that happened with these physical ships, that these extraterrestrials were all about evolution. They were not about war. They were not about military. They were not about any of that stuff, fighting and battles and conflict. They were about evolution. They're much higher level of an extraterrestrial presence than what we are so programmed to look for. So I was wondering, if we tune our frequency to that vibration, to that reality, we might see and know and experience things that we can't see and know when we're so tuned into a frequency of battle and military and government and war and all that stuff. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you don't want to listen to this radio station, maybe you ought to retune your frequency so you hear this one instead. And I suspect that's very much how the universe works. The reason I'm bringing this up is because so many of us who are awakening, or we're starseeds, or we're lightworkers, or just awakening people, so many of us feel so alone. I know so many people feel like, gosh, it's like we just got dropped off here and we don't even know what's going on. We feel so, a lot of people say, I just want to go home. It's like we don't feel that connection to something beyond us. And I never have believed that we were just meant to do this alone. I've never believed that we're just dumped here, forget who we are, we don't know anything, like, good luck, people, hope you can figure this one out, right? I've never believed that that's really what this is. So what alerted me to this, as I said, is when it just kind of like a light went off and it was like, wait a second. Those were physical ships. Those were extraterrestrials. How many more places are those kinds of things happening? It's even conceivable that some of you guys watching this had a similar experience and maybe you just don't even remember it, but it could have happened, because why not? I mean, I think it happened to a whole lot of people on this planet. Now, the experience that I'm describing to you happened quite a while ago, but I don't think that was the end of it. So here's another thing I was thinking about related to seeing things through one set of eyes as opposed to another based on our frequency and our vibration of thought. Have you ever heard that saying, the scales need to fall from our eyes? I mean, I kind of think that's a reptilian saying, or I think it has to do with the reptilians on some level. So here's a question. Is our extraterrestrial perspective seen through the eyes of reptilians, or seen through the eyes of a reptilian reality, which of course has been projected on us forever, or seen through the lens of the reptiles, who are all about war, violence, death, and fear? I mean, this is really weird, because if you think about it, Ascension is about evolution. It's not about war. So that's why I say it's a little weird that we keep looking at the warmongers on this planet for information about extraterrestrials. We could be missing something really, really huge. Think about this. Wouldn't it make sense that all of us as lightworkers and starseeds, we're all here. There could be a lot of support right here surrounding this planet of these high-level extraterrestrials that we are not connecting with for all the reasons I just described. I think there's some serious things that we need to contemplate about our overall perspective, and are we looking through the lens of brainwashing without even realizing it? Now, I want to go back to that story I told you about Karen being taken up on that ship, and not just about her, but the fact that there were so many other people that this was happening to. And I want to focus on the message, the main activation message of those extraterrestrials. It's interesting because they didn't use the words, it's time to wake up. They never used the words waking up or awakening. They specifically said they actually said the time is coming soon, but I think the time is now. I think the time they were talking about back then is actually now. But they use the word shed your false identity and be who you really are. So let's talk about what that means and how that can affect everyone here on Earth. I mean, it's very clear to me just from this one story alone that we've actually had an intervention. And there's another thing that happened. I think it was back in the 1980s. Maybe some of you all heard about this. Have you heard of a book called The Starseed Transmissions that was written by Ken Carey? And that was an extraterrestrial transmission to Ken Carey that he wrote about that I think was also about our current time of ascension. I read the book a long time ago, so I don't remember it entirely, but I think it was all about this Christ consciousness, but it was very clear it was an extraterrestrial message for starseeds. So to me, that was a very profound and powerful thing that happened to him. That would have been another example of an intervention. So I think it's important to understand that we have had cosmic intervention on this planet, cosmic extraterrestrial intervention. But more importantly, we need to understand that we ourselves are a part of that intervention. We are not a bunch of lost, floundering Earth people who have no idea about what is really going on. And I think that's why the extraterrestrials at the time said the time is coming soon to shed your false identity and be who you really are. Well, that time of soon has now arrived. We are here and the time is now. So this can be a very powerful moment of revelation for all of us. So here's the overall situation. We have a planet here that is on the verge of being completely taken over by AI. Now, if you think that no one in the cosmos cares about that, I think you're probably not correct. See, things are happening and things have been put in place to counter that. So it's really time for us to understand our role in that. And I think that's what so many of us are missing because of that brainwashing I was talking about. Now, the controllers of this planet have one aim and one aim only. They desperately want to keep us locked into our false identities using psychological warfare and fear. Because the thing is, in those false identities, we have no power. So let's take a look at the larger dynamics of our situation. So you have the Earth being taken over by AI, and then you have a whole lot of people on Earth, all of whom are in their own unique place when it comes to their larger evolutionary journey. And there's really no way to measure where everyone is in their own unique journey in relation to this larger situation. But fortunately, nature has that covered. In nature, we have this ascension energy, which can be thought of as pure, high vibrational, high frequency light. In an ascension process, this light permeates the entire planet and all of its dimensions of existence. And this light is actually the same light that we are all a part of in the bigger picture of the entire universe. So this increase in light activates the light within every single person on Earth. The differentiating factor does not have to do with the light itself. It has to do with how people react to that light. And the reaction has to do with how much fear a person holds within themselves. And that is why the controllers want us to stay in fear. So let's talk about how the controllers react to that light. The way they react to it is with total fear. That's why they're shutting us all down. They don't want us to breathe or to move or to do anything. I mean, they literally cannot handle this degree of light intensification. They are in absolute fear of losing control. And thus, because they use fear to control, they are ramping up the fear exponentially. And the more they ramp up the fear, the more people will cling to the false identity that was formed and created by fear. That way you have an entire range of reactions to this light. You have a range from people who completely shut down in fear, and then you have all the way to the other end of that spectrum of people who just open up and are just like relieved. But the light is equal to all, kind of like how the sun is equal to all. So our role as lightworkers and starseeds is to completely shed our false identities and become the light, to become an expression and manifestation of that light as best we possibly can. That way, we physically anchor that light in the human sphere on this planet. Because see, we want to be at the end of the spectrum where we open up, we embrace, we accept, and we become what that light really is. And this is the reason why it doesn't really work to take a passive position and say, oh, well, you know, somebody else is going to handle this whole thing. This is why the idea of ETs rescuing us doesn't work, or why the idea of politicians are going to fix everything doesn't work, because they're just crazy. See, none of those ideas is a co-creative position, and I think the reason we take it is because of that filter that I was talking about that does not allow us to tune into that frequency of those high-level extraterrestrials that we are here to co-create with. See, we are conditioned our entire lives to believe that someone else is always going to take care of everything, or that someone else is going to take care of the big picture. So fundamentally, we just need to let that go and function as powerful co-creators in this cosmos. And here's something else that's really important to consider. Every time you entertain the belief that someone else is handling it, you're actually giving away part of your power. You're ceding part of yourself to someone else. See, we are each meant to be whole within ourselves. And then we can co-create with other extraterrestrial forces who are also whole. And that is when we get exponential power, as opposed to a mathematical scenario that's just about the sum of the parts. See, the sum of the parts doesn't work here, because when you're looking at it as the sum of the parts, you're dealing with conflict and war and who's winning, who's losing, and how does everybody get along. And you know, there's just a lot more power available than that being the only perspective. So just to sort of encapsulate everything I've said so far, I think it's important that we understand that we ourselves are on this planet because we are actually part of the intervention. We are part of a cosmic extraterrestrial intervention on this planet. We did not come here to become submerged in the problem. We came here in a co-creative role with high-level extraterrestrial beings as a co-creative force and power of influence in this situation. And I think we can really simplify our understanding of this whole picture like this. This entire mass awakening on this planet Earth is literally about a breakdown of the false identity that the controllers have engineered for everyone on this earth. I mean, that's really the simplicity of what's going on. So our role is to exist as a beautiful example of what that looks like. And you know, I just want to add one final thing before I complete this. I think a lot of times we tend to take a perspective, and this is how we're conditioned. We tend to take a perspective of we have to become something. You know, we have to become more of something, or change ourselves, or be better, or fix ourselves. Actually, there's a simpler way to look at it. Maybe it's as simple as saying we just have to undo the brainwashing, peel away the false identity, just transmute all this junk, because we don't need to become something other than what we are. We actually need to be, as that extraterrestrial message was, the time has come. I'm going to change it because I think the message is very powerfully, the time has come. Even though the time is coming soon, I think we're at the point where the time has come to shed our false identity and be who we really are. I really think that is the profound activation that is before us at this very moment in time. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, please give it a thumbs up and share it out with anyone else who you think would enjoy hearing this perspective. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell, because I am here every Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday with all new videos. And with that, I'm sending you so much love, light, and high vibrational energy, and I so look forward to seeing you in the next video. Namaste.